I wanted to talk a bit about some models that many of you are familiar with from working with me in the distant past, like 2 decades ago, that have to do with boys, men, growth, personal growth. How does all that work? Healing could be a part of it, but it's more important to understand what is masculinity and what is femininity. Does that exist? I most certainly believe it does. So, a simple way to look at it, there's been debate for decades about the validity of the triune brain model of Paul MacLean. That did begin with an attempt at looking at neuroanatomy. That is true. And that was disproven that there's, a mammal layered on a reptile brain and then the human brain, the cortex layered on top of the mammal brain. That that is disproven anatomically. However, if you use these three different, I would say, software packages of the mind, instead of looking at it as a brain, look at it as a model of the mind, then it is quite elegant. It really amounts to there being what Freud first proposed, an unconscious and a conscious mind. Then he had the unconscious, subconscious, or preconscious, and then conscious. I got tripartite mind. And then eventually he came up with id, ego, superego. So there are these three-part models all the way back to Freud. And I believe it to be the most simplistic way, not simplistic, simple, elegant way to explain three kinds of software functions of the mind. The unconscious is where several things reside, one of which is the instincts, the major thing of which is the instincts. There are other things down there too that Grainger could talk about, such as beliefs, unconscious beliefs that you carry, that you've been um, indoctrinated with or tried and found them true and useful, and then kind of put them on autopilot, so to speak. And then the ego defenses, at least the primitive ones, primitive and immature ones, are also unconscious. Then we have emotions. Obviously, we have emotions. Oh, there goes my little device for holding the phone. Um, uh, Males and females have similar emotional range, although they express them and use them differently. And then, of course, there's the conscious mind, the intellect, um, things we consciously believe, education and experience that we've had. So, in this three-part model, I have always placed, so for decades, I've always placed the concept of masculinity itself and femininity in the unconscious mind. Now, that's similar as an idea to those of Carl Jung, successor to Freud. I'm not a strict Jungian person. I'm a unification theorist, somewhat like Arthur Statz from Hawaii, who is deceased, or Martin Seligman does a lot of unification work. And I believe that because uh, this is the only area where males and females are markedly different, and yet there are analogous functions going on. I've always liked part of Jungianism, the concept that throughout literature, myth, folklore, and storytelling, and by the way, Freud called psychology the talking cure, and the linguists that were the dominant school of philosophy around the time of Freud believed that the mind is structured like a language. And so stories are not frivolous and in their own way not unscientific, in that if they last for hundreds of years or even thousands of years, there must be universals to them about human behavior. Otherwise, they wouldn't last. They wouldn't get retold. So I think that's highly valuable. Now, you could look to ancient Chinese mythologic traditions or ancient Hindu mythology and find all the same features of the unconscious mind. and the differences between males and females in their instincts, which reside there. But I have always found that either Roman or Greek, they're equal, analogous to each other, just different names, um, offer a complete canon of human instinctual tendencies. Now, and this can be males being different from females, but in some ways, either being analogous to each other. I'm going to explain that in a moment, or exactly similar. Where I believe male and female instincts within the unconscious are exactly similar, we go to the famous Darwinian equation of evolution operating by way of individual creatures and ultimately the species surviving long enough to reproduce. That survival variable, I believe to be what males and females have in common, in exact common. Um, Loud noise behind you makes you automatically jump. It's a reflex. It's an instinct. A sudden growl behind you of a mountain lion certainly makes you react, whether you're male or female. This is the survival instinct, the survival variable. So even there, males and females are exactly alike in what their response is going to be unconsciously and reflexly. But what about the reproductive variable? There has to be a difference between males and females there because we initially are attracted to that which is different from us and which might offer both compatibility but collaboration, bringing more skills to the table, more tools to work with in ultimately surviving and then reproducing. And you've heard of the dance of courtship. So, the two big thrusts of my academic life for 30 years have been the study of human courtship. Much like Konrad Lorenz, after he discovered the concept of imprinting, which has several forms, one of which is attachment, and attachment theory is hot these days. All goes back to Konrad Lorenz. Bonding, introjection is a third. And I actually want to tie this together by saying I propose there is a fourth kind of imprinting, and it happens in adolescence and beyond. And I would call it initiation from the world of anthropology. When we are uh, brothers at arms, soldiers at war, we become very cohesive. We truly become brothers. It's a transition into a new piece of our identity that has to do with our group activity that we're doing together as soldiers. Or I certainly found that in medical school, and how arduous, how hellish at times it was to survive, stay up all night, 6 nights a week or 4 nights a week, and work a 120-hour work week as a resident and as a medical student. It was horrific. But it was a trial to pass, a trial to get through with my brothers and sisters at arms. And so part of my identity became physician. And I get what that means. Nobody else does who didn't do that. They can't quite get it in an embodied way except by doing it. And I belong to that group. And that group has identity that is part of my identity. That's initiation, which is why today I've come to believe that um, with the lack of any modern initiation rituals left, high school and college graduation don't count. Marriage doesn't really count because there has to be an element of danger and the fear of death involved in initiations. Will I make it? Will we make it? I remember some nights on call during that period of my life that really dangerous things were happening for patients. I had to be responsible for stopping the danger, and it was terrifying at first when you're a newbie and you're a student and you're just learning. for the first time. And I remember sometimes laying in the call room bed, looking up at the bright light that wouldn't let you sleep in the hospital and thinking, "Oh my God, will I last the night? Will I survive?" Of course, my body will survive, but will my mind survive? Will it survive this training? So initiation has to have that kind of danger and fear of death to it, even if death of your body isn't going to be the result. It's fearsome. So when I think today about what do we have left that we voluntarily go through or involuntarily go through, well, our challenges in life, some of which rise to the level of traumas. And as a practitioner of several techniques for those decades at healing trauma, I think our traumas and their healing today offer us uh, multiple chances to continue to initiate or to face the fear of death. That's part of the old definition of PTSD is that you experience a life-threatening circumstance. That's the survival variable. However, what about the other Darwinian variable, reproduction? Francine Shapiro used to call these trauma with a big T, that's threat to your life, and trauma with a little t, things that aren't a threat to your life but are traumatic. I've come to believe that her term trauma with a little t really is trauma to either your masculinity, bringing it back to the beginning here, trauma to your masculinity or trauma to your femininity, if you're a woman. And I believe masculinity to be the exact same thing as Freud's concept of libido, which was not sexual appetite, it was life force. It was the ability uh, to be excited, to wake up in the morning, to be exuberant, to feel charisma, vitality, and ultimately viability, life force for the male. And femininity for females, I believe, to be their life force, their libido, their charisma, their excitement to be alive, their vitality and viability. But beyond being an energy of the instincts, a life force, a psychological energy, I believe these two sets of instincts to be just that, to be divided into certain behavioral tendencies that are universal throughout all the cultures of the world and throughout all human history, as evidenced in the storytelling. Going back from modern cinema to Shakespeare, that is the basis for award-winning modern cinema, all the way back to ancient mythologic traditions like the Greeks or Romans, on which all Shakespeare is based. These stories that last contain characters that tend to have one or at most two or three most prominent superpowers, if you will. These are characters who have, when they are good at what they do, they are characters who have been initiated into the full understanding and use of, I believe, a particular masculine or feminine instinct. That's exactly what they are. And so to use literature doesn't make me Jungian. It makes me curious and interested in the durability of stories to already have laid out for us what to look for that is universal in unconscious instinctual behavior, whether it's survival instincts, masculine instincts, which I've been talking about, you guys who know me well since the 2000s, or feminine instincts, which haven't yet been studied by some of the researchers out there. So I look forward to them seeing that in the nomenclature that I've been using all this time, using the Greek names of deities to name each specific instinct, it really colors in by virtue of those ancient stories what to look for in the research, what behavioral tendencies are indeed universal to males, to females, and to us both in what we share. Um, I'll just lastly say that when there is a blockage, a blockade of any of these instincts, a lack of a place to express them, a purposeful diminishment of them, I use the word shame to describe that. I know many have used shame in terms of it being similar to guilt, where guilt is useful to humans because it changes our ways, our behaviors toward the good, and shame is never useful. It's just needlessly guilting a person. I think it's way more profound than that. I think shame literally is a diminishment of masculinity for a male or a diminishment of femininity for a female by way of tamping down, blocking, suppressing, or injuring ultimately one or more of these masculine or feminine instincts. And so if you use trauma techniques like inner child or EMDR or the tapping technique, um, what you're doing is literally giving the person a chance at reinitiation into, again, full use of the masculine or feminine instinct, which was injured, thus raising the masculinity back up or femininity back up, and essentially bringing the person back to life psychologically. And that's why some trauma techniques like EMDR seem so miraculous. It's like Lazarus raised from the dead. You've literally brought back the energy of life. Call it this, call it passion. Um, that's a synonym for libido. And it's a synonym for masculinity. It's a synonym for femininity. It's your passion for life. All right, I'm going to see if I can get our friend to join. Here we go. Maybe he's ready. Hey there.
What's up?
What's up, Grainger?
Let me get this picked up. Man, I've been watching. This has been interesting stuff.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it took 3 decades to develop but to simplify. And it truly is a synthesis. It's not just Jungian psychology, but although a nod to Jung in terms of the idea of literature, myth, and folklore being highly useful and specific about human behavior, obviously, you can unify various theories together, such as those of Konrad Lorenz and his imprinting, the duckling.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people know that Lorenz went on, after the ducklings and imprinting, he went on the rest of his life to study human courtship.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? Because
Yeah.
human courtship is the exact same thing as imprinting. It's an instinct turning on, but only in the right circumstances and at the right time. The timing of courtship. If you don't get that right, it feels off to somebody. And if you don't get the right behavior, it feels off to somebody.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hey, tell us about you. I could take you on a little simultaneous tour
Dude,
here.
this is really cool behind you, man. This is like,
Yeah, this is
taking me back to my days.
This is my rock star buddy's loft.
Yeah.
And there's all his gear. Maybe I'm not allowed to reveal his intellectual property here.
Yeah.
Got a lot of Buddha statues, and then we got an Egyptian, like tent hanging. He's Egyptian. It's hanging in the corner, and there's the drums, and then we've got the glory of all of these guitars right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord. That looks like that's a musician's dream right there.
Oh yeah, big time. Big time. We've got I'll just give you a quick peek.
Yeah.
Down at the streets of Chicago. All right.
Nice.
Oh.
I've done a couple gigs out there.
Did you?
Man,
What do you play?
I play everything, but I did it for about 15 years, traveled with a couple rock bands, a couple country artists, and just
Wow.
had a little fun. I didn't have anything to show for it, but I had a whole lot of fun and have a lot of relationships as a result of it. So that looks super familiar. I played the House of Blues actually in Chicago is where we
Oh,
played.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know how as a young man, most young men at some point in their 20s, have to go to LA to try to become a star and all this. So I had these buddies that all did that at the same time, and one of them, the highest he got in that arena was he got to play in an MTV video, young Toby Keith. He
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he was the role of, "How Do You Like Me Now?" was the
Oh,
video.
I remember
And
it. Because I used to run around with Toby Keith.
yeah.
So I remember that. Yeah, I do remember when that happened. I got a funny, quick Toby Keith story. So
Yeah.
I played at a club on once one week, one night a week, and his band played with me. And so what we do is I play on Wednesday nights, and then on Thursdays they get on the bus with him and take off and go do real gigs. And I played at this club every Wednesday. Well, Wednesday night there was CMA Awards. Well, he had been shunned for the CMA Awards for years. They never would let him be a part of it. Wouldn't let him do
Huh.
anything. He finally gets nominated and he wins. I think it was like male vocalist of the year. Well,
Wow.
what the traditional thing in the industry was when you were part of, you got nominated or if you won an award at the CMA Awards, you go to a like an after party for the record label. They put on this, they spend lavish amounts of money to put on these after parties. He won that award. And when he walked off stage, there was still about 30 minutes left of the award ceremony. He walked off stage, went out the back door, took the award, tossed it in the back of his truck, and drove his truck to the club where we were. Like he just left, and the whole record label's looking for him after the awards, and he finally picks up his phone. And goes, "What?" And they go, "Where are you at?" He goes, "I'm over here at the club watching Grainger." And they're like, "What's going on?" And so when we asked him when he came in, we're like, "Dude, we were just watching you on the TV. What are you doing here?" And he goes, "You think I want anything to do with all that stuffy crap? I came in here to buy y'all a beer." And he bought the whole bar beer.
That is great.
And
That is
that's a true testament to who Toby Keith was. Like that's who he was.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, my buddy whose place I'm staying at here, his musical career began when, a band he had entered, back in the day, entered when MTV actually played videos and existed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he won his band won the contest, a nationwide contest, and they got featured for like weeks on, right next to Michael Jackson and
Mm.
In Excess and
Mhm.
things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you asking me to hang out. I'll be honest with you. When I'm on Substack, I'm learning from you and Jeremy and Dr. Steve Stewart Williams and James Nuzzo and some stuff Todd Cashin puts out, and like those are the guys that I'm watching to kind of sponge, take in, and learn because I'm not that experienced in this world. Um, and so it was funny when you said, "Hey, we should do a podcast." I was like, "Well, what do I need to learn that day?" Because I'm around to learn, man. I'm just here to learn.
Well, a lot of what I've learned, and I guess what I have to offer is life's experience. And I could tell by
Yeah.
your writing that, regardless of how many academic papers you published or not, you have a lot of life's experience. You have boys, I think more than one. I have one. Um, and there's a lot in there to unpack, as they say, as far as what's been going on in the culture and what's been changing about the culture, and what is a boy and what is a man, and how does one become the other in a chaotic, changing culture that tells men they're toxic or did. Maybe it won't as much anymore. I don't know, and certainly tells that to boys. Um, yeah. What are your
Yeah,
observations? How'd
yeah.
you become a
So
therapist, actually? How'd you get into, like, from country and rock to being a rock and roll therapist?
oddly enough, I was doing this is the first time it became an inclination. I was on a plane coming back from Japan, and we had done a big show in Japan, and we were coming back, and I was sitting there. One of the guys started asking me a question just about what you would ask a therapist, like just a
Yeah.
behavioral life question. Next thing you know, I got the entire band standing up because those flights are like 13-hour flights,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
the planes are huge. They're standing over me. I'm still sitting in my seat looking around like, what y'all doing? They're standing over me and just like bleed, like sponging on every single word that comes out of my mouth. And I was like, huh, this is interesting. I must have something to offer. I never thought I did. I never looked into that. So that was the beginnings of it. And then as it progressed, I got involved. I helped start a church about 6 years ago. I'm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And about 25 minutes outside of Nashville. And I'd helped start a church. And when I did that, I almost immediately rolled into the pastoral counseling role. And I don't know how that happened. It was like the pastor didn't want to do it. And he goes, "Hey, go see that guy." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll talk to you." And I sat down and talked to him, and then I immediately was in that role, like almost just by proxy. And right in the middle of that, my wife goes, "Have you thought about doing this for a living?" And I was like, "No, it's never crossed my mind." And she said, "You might want to because you seem to be doing something." Because I was having results with people's
Right,
lives.
right, right.
And again, this is another thing I'm humble about. I promise I'm humble about it. And people say, "I'm so humble." That's, but I really was like, I don't think I have a whole lot to offer. But when I saw the fruit, when I saw the result, I was like, oh, I might actually have something here. I might should look into this. So that's the short version, but that's how I got here.
Yeah,
Just
well,
trial and error.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's kind of a fatherly vibe to you, and
Yeah.
for all the academic training that you can do in various kinds of therapy, there underneath it all, there's got to be somebody that can root a patient or client into the present. If you can't get somebody present minded, they can't possibly self observe or learn. And Freud called that observing ego. I guess
Hmm.
today we would call it mindfulness or something like that,
Hmm.
theory of
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah.
But also, uh, have you ever heard of the term active therapist versus a passive therapist?
Yes. Yes.
So a passive therapist is like, so tell me about your mother. And then they just do nothing and let you tell a story. But an active therapist tends to be, whether they're male or female, they tend to be more, I think, paternal, whether they're male or female, in the sense of being like a coach, pushing you, giving you homework. You're accountable for this, buddy. By next time, you better have done your homework. And you have that kind of vibe to you. So I'll bet there's an active therapist kind of.
Oh, 100%. And you know what's interesting is when I've only been doing clinical for a couple of years now, and in the clinical setting, what happened, and you'll appreciate this based on what you just said. We had a couple of clients come in, and they end up being they were like teenage boys that were court ordered. So I do a lot of court ordered stuff right now, and they come in court ordered, got caught with a weed pen somewhere or something, whatever little infraction thing. They're sitting in front of me, and 5 minutes into our conversation, I realize they have no father presence. They have no paternal influence at all.
Yeah.
And it hits me. And I think, what would my dad do to me right now? Kind of thing. Or, I go into that vein. Well, what was happening was I started treating more and like it got around in the community and literally moms were walking in with their sons, with the back of their neck of their sons like this going, "I heard you have a guy here that can see him and do something with him because I'm gonna kill him if he doesn't." Like joking, but just like
Yeah.
frustrated. They walk in and go, "I hear there's a guy here," and my boss was just going, like, who runs the clinical office. He goes, "Yeah, he's back here. We can set you up with an appointment."
Oh,
And it just stacked. The next thing you know, I had like 8 to 10 at a time, and I'd kind of move them in and out. But teenage boys, and
wow.
almost all of them had no paternal presence. So you're right. You're exactly right. What was happening? I was just calling them up. It was a very similar thing that if you remember, that was sort of Peterson's niche back in 2017
Yeah. Yeah.
was calling them up, and the guys kind of responded to it like, "Oh, I am better than this. I don't have to just sit here and be late to every appointment and be a weak, spineless individual. I can be on time, look a man in the eye, shake his hand,
Yeah.
be dependable, be respectable, protect the people around you. I can be those things and I'm gonna feel better about myself. So what was happening was I was seeing these teenage boys, and I was literally doing exactly what you just said. I'm literally going, "You're better than that," and I'm gonna tell you why I know you're better than that, because you just said this, this, and this, and that tells me you're better than that. So I'm gonna call you up, and next week when I see you, here's what you better have done. You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
every single one of them rise to the occasion. Everyone.
What you make me think of is the difference between purely academic knowledge, unpracticed, unused, no clinical experience, sort of spouting facts that are research backed. That's great. The difference between those facts and your intuitive knowledge of just knowing what to do. Now, maybe at first you did not know the name of what you were doing to be
Right.
existential therapy, which is
Right.
the supposedly one of the only therapies that can work on an unruly teen boy, where you say, "Hey, buddy, I know you might not be back, and this is our only chance, but can we get something done now? Let's do whatever we can do to help you now. Let's do something now, because maybe you won't be back." But then he comes back because of your paternal nature.
It's so funny. I love asking 15-year-old boys, "Tell me what your life's gonna be like when you're 30." And watch their brains just fry. They go, like, "What are you talking about? I've never thought past 16." Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
force
yeah.
them to think about 30 and everything. Honestly, I find the right time to bring that in. I don't bring it in right away. I find the right time to bring it in, but every time I bring it in, I've noticed that's where the therapeutic relationship goes. That's where it turns on that
Where does
question.
that cluster? Like all the answers you've ever gotten to that question, where do they tend to cluster? They want to be a billionaire. They want to be a rock star. They want to be a
You know,
father. Probably not. They want
you
to be a
would think,
father.
oddly enough, you ready? I am in
Yeah.
kind of rural area. I'm not in a city area. So
Okay.
I'm gonna my the demographic out here is there's a lot of blue collar, there's a lot of middle class, suburban, rural kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna believe this. The cluster really is almost all of them say, I'm gonna be, and they name the job. They name the job. I'm gonna be a welder. I'm gonna
Huh.
own diesel mechanic shop. I want a wife and I want 2 kids. I want them both to be boys. They all start saying
Wow.
these types of things, and I would expect what you said. Every time I'm thinking, "Oh, he's gonna tell me he wants to be a YouTube star."
Yeah. Yeah.
He wants to be TikTok famous. That's what I'm bracing myself for, and every time they
Yeah.
say something really, really astounding, like really like thought, I think, man. But of course, you know what the next question is. Well, how you plan on getting there doing what you're doing?
Right. Right.
And then that, of course, that turns to the next page. So, I think what you said when I was watching before I got on, you were saying something very interesting about shame and guilt, and I thought about that as pertaining to these boys, because I will tend to do is I make sure that I'm careful not to shame them through where they are. I even like to use the word conviction. When you have a conviction about something, there's this internal awareness that really gets juxtaposed against reality and rationality, right?
Yes.
And you have this. You're like, oh, I really probably need to do something different, and it drives you towards what I consider restoration, whatever might have been disjointed. A conviction, and even sometimes guilt can do this, will drive you back to the restoration. Whereas shame, its aim is to divide.
Yes.
Shame's aim is to cut, slice, and separate. And so I tend to find myself very careful about that with these kids, because obviously they've been hearing this a lot to get them into the place they're in. Um, and so I find that interesting. You were talking about that a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to link up to. I looked into some of your recent writings, so that I could refer to some of what's been top of mind for you lately. And one of them was about beliefs. Okay, so I want to go back to that IABP concept that you were talking about, beliefs. But just to reiterate, I was always taught in medical school and beyond that shame is just like guilt, only it's unjustified. It's imposed upon a person like guilting someone who did not
Mhm.
deserve to be guilted. And so it's
Mm.
purposeless. It just does damage.
Mhm.
It's harmful and does
Mhm.
damage. Whereas guilt is a learning opportunity where we can figure out something lacking in our conscience, our
Mhm.
ethics, and correct it about how we've harmed somebody else. And then we want to never do that again. But today, after the advent of one of the latest fields of psychology being evolutionary psychology, and it made me think so much about what is instinctual, because that's really what evolutionary psychology is about. It's about the instinct.
Right.
Because what else would
Right.
automatically rise to the occasion
Right.
for numerous creatures within a species to keep the species alive? And like that,
Right.
it's not like conscious pondering that is
Right.
inherited. It's not just beliefs are inherited. It's instinctual things are inherited.
Right. Right.
So it made me think about how shame is the ultimate harm, and it's harm to the sense of personhood,
Mhm.
which to me sounds like a trauma, which means that if you look at Freud's terminology, for we don't need any new terms for blockage of a masculine or feminine instinct, because for Freud, blocking it in a male was called castration, kind of a
Mhm.
brutal
Mhm.
word. Today we might call it emasculinization, but he had
Mhm.
an extremely odd phrase, never used again, for female shame: penis envy.
Okay.
And what was wrong about that term, like numerous things are wrong with it today and in our culture, but what was wrong is the male-centered terminology for what really is female shame. There ought to be a different name for that. I would like maybe Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter.
Mm.
Banishment is the ultimate shame for a female. The
Mm.
Scarlet Letter, he should have
Mhm.
called it. But obviously, shame pertains to this thing called libido that Freud talked about, life force,
Mm.
life energy. Because if you are shamed, did you ever see, obviously, you saw the Flintstones, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right. So Fred Flintstone, when he does something embarrassing and the community shame him, he goes, weird. Like he shrinks
Right.
down
Yeah.
to like little tiny
Yeah.
Fred Flintstone.
Right.
It's that
Right.
diminishment of life, of feeling
Yeah.
alive.
Vitality.
So,
Yeah.
so that's how I
Yeah.
realized shame is the exact antithesis to
Right. Right.
masculinity or to femininity, to life
And
force.
I tend to sometimes, it's interesting. I guess the way I was connecting it, as you were saying, is I tend to view things in interpersonal relationships because I just know how social we're designed to be and we're wired to be. If you go evolutionary psychology route,
Yeah,
we're wired to be, interacting, and so I saw that shame and as a separation from that interaction, whereas a guilt could draw you back to the interaction. It could restore.
yeah, I could see that. So let me take a look at what I sent myself from your writings here. Here we go. Okay, so IABP, your latest post, identity anchoring belief persistence. What is that?
I took a look at there's a guy on Substack, his name, he goes by the moniker Sci-Fi, and he did this one time. He invented a diagnosis, right?
Oh,
And and he invented this diagnosis, and I jumped in. I was like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen," and I kind of updated it for him a little bit, and we came up with maternal association of mimicry of autism or something like that. And it was basically, and it was MAMA, MAMA, and it was this idea that moms, there's this, and I won't get into it. I go back to IBP, but it was just an invented diagnosis that he came up with, and I thought it was brilliant. And he wrote about it. He wrote this whole piece about it, and it was brilliant, brilliantly done. And then I thought, what if I could do the same thing? What if we just invent a diagnosis? Because I thought, well, it's no different than what they did in the DSM-5. They just invented a bunch of stuff. So, okay, let's come up with one, and it's that IABP. And it was basically what I kept seeing was this inability, and I kind of see it in my own self. I can't say I'm not guilty of this, but this inability to accept new information. And it struck me. I wanted to know
uh,
the psychology
yeah.
behind it. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough that it's like, nope, I'm right. That wasn't enough. Like the whole, just quick response. I wanted to know what was under it. I wanted to know what the psychology was, was behind it. And so as I researched for that article, what I found was, I did find things like the backfire effect, and the continued insistence effect, where the backfire is, there's this tendency for people to, when they hear something that conflicts with what they previously know or currently know, they dig their heels in and know it more, even if it was presented as factual evidence. And it started to, like what you were just talking about,
Yeah.
the person, the vitality, the the agency of that person. That's what feels like it becomes, that you feel like that's what's under attack, right? So now when somebody says, well, this is what I think. Well, this is actually wrong. Let me show you why. All of a sudden, what somebody does is they start feeling like physiological symptoms. Blood pressure's rising. They're shaking a little bit. They're getting a little nervous. They feel like you've attacked them as a person when you've really attacked a belief. And it was the psychology behind taking a belief system or just a group of beliefs and attaching it to yourself so strongly that you can't let go and you can't grow. And so one of the phrases I use in it, probably the hook line for the whole article, was, if you're working so hard to be right, you can't become right. If you grip so hard onto the notion of being right, you cannot become right. And it's this idea that I just have to be right. And you know what? You're
Yeah.
thinking you're right while you're being wrong, and you have no ability anymore to move past this and actually grow. And so years ago, I began seeing mistakes as opportunities. I began seeing failures as growth, and I stopped worrying about whether or not I was right about everything. And I just went, you know what? Maybe I'm not right. And as soon as I started doing that for my own psyche, I remember everything
Yeah.
just changed for me. And so that's what that article was just covering, some of the psychology behind it and some of the how we, hopefully somebody read that and went, "Ooh, I do that," and I could probably get better at that. Which is just this immediate defense shield when you hear something that you just say, "Well, that's not right." You know?
Wow. There got to be a lot of working parts to that. Even though I argue with colleagues about how much I value the triune brain model, even though neuroanatomically it's disproven, it just makes such elegant sense for how to view the mind. I was jumping around through all three brains there in my head as you were talking, and I was thinking, oh, people who have to be right, that's just narcissism. Because one of the three pillars of narcissism is win lose thinking and behavior. So if you're right, then that must automatically make me wrong. If I'm wrong, that makes you right. For me to be right, I have to make you wrong. It's the same as winning and losing. Like you have more money than me, I need to make you have less money than me, or I'm not going to feel good as a narcissist. So I think it's a
Mm.
narcissistic feature you're talking about. Part of that there that's anchoring uh, people's sense of self to some prescribed politics or belief systems, as opposed to being open, being a curious person. I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of
Well,
uncurious people out there in the
right.
world, right?
Yeah. Think think about it from, because there's another angle to this, because I hear what you're saying, and it is certainly accurate. I think there's another person too. I think there's the other person is somebody who feels really insecure, really like not confident in themselves. Maybe they had their parents told them they were stupid their whole lives, and here they are. And then now
Right.
I've separated from them. I've got my own life. I've got my own job. I got my own house, and now I have what I believe is right, and now you're threatening that, and
Uh,
I can't handle that threat. I'd rather just be like, I'd rather just believe that I'm right and move on and not accept what this new information is, because it's a threat to my system. And I've been told I'm stupid my whole life. So forget that. Like there's that person too, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day when I was trying to understand the nature and function of beliefs and of memory. I remember that memory is stored all over the whole brain. It's not in any one little part of the brain. Although the hippocampus on each side of the brain is responsible for assigning emotional valence to each
Mm-hmm.
memory, to each idea.
Mm-hmm.
And traumatologists love talking about this in regards to trauma, but I like what it means just for all of us, traumatized or not. The hippocampus assigns emotion, and emotion is what value is. Anything we value. And the most
Right.
memorable memories are those with the biggest emotion, either negative or
Exactly.
positive. But it's
Right. Yep.
value that's assigned. So I always use the example, my first car was a Volkswagen Jetta. It was $500, but it was worth $1 million to me in value because of all the things that it would do. It would never break down. It could take me anywhere. It looked cool. It felt good to drive. It felt like freedom. It was
It was
worth
your
way
first
more than
car.
$500, my first car,
Right. Yep.
right? It's because of the emotion it gave me. It's not because
Right.
the
Yep.
dollar amount, right? So
Yeah.
beliefs have an emotional valence to them,
Right.
right? What do you
And
think about
we can't
people?
let that.
Oh,
I
go
was gonna say
ahead.
we can't let that wreck our nervous system, right? We can't let it like, oh, there's a
Yeah,
shock to the nervous system. I gotta hang on to this thing, and it's like, and it is the curiosity. I just read, Todd Caston's piece he did on or his paper actually on curiosity, which was incredible. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, no, what I was gonna say is, I used to think that if you add up all the beliefs a person possesses, some of which are conscious, but many of which are unconscious and just buried now and running on autopilot, you added all of them up, that would be your reality. Your
Right.
reality. So when I work with psychotic patients, schizophrenic patients, you don't want to justify their delusions, like believing aliens took them away or believing they have, superpowers or something like this. You don't
Hmm.
you don't justify it and say, yes, I agree, that's true. But you also don't rip it out from under them. It's like the ground people walk on
Oh, that's
is
good.
their
That's
reality,
good.
right? You don't want to rip
Yeah.
that away or they'll just lose it. And
Right.
you can make a non-psychotic person technically psychotic by twisting their reality so bad. Like a
Hmm.
narcissistic fog would be an example of that. Abusive relationships can do that, gaslighting and so forth. But
Yeah.
isn't that interesting that beliefs add up to be our reality, the reality of the world, the way we see it, but also the reality of who am I? Like what I believe
Hmm.
myself to be. Isn't that what you're talking about with this
That
article?
that's where identity anchoring is, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that identity anchoring belief persistence. I'm not letting go because it's who I am. And
yeah,
what I'd set out after I researched that and after I wrote it, I like thought back on it and I thought, man, if there's a way to figure out, and you probably already have techniques in your back pocket, but ways to figure out to separate the belief from the identity. The moment the moment we can separate the two and go, look, you believe this, but it's not necessarily
yeah,
who you
yeah.
are. We can just say, I believe this now, but I can believe this later. And guess what? It makes you smarter than you were yesterday. And the way that the whatever techniques are out there, and of course, I haven't even really thought about it because, like you said, I'm a lot more instinctual than I am theoretical. But separating the belief from the identity, I think, is the key to helping that person move forward.
I could buy that. I don't have anything to base this theory on or concept on, but here's what I envisioned in what you just said. What if, and I'm not going to venture too politically incorrect here. What if a male who has masculine instincts was told ever since he was a boy that it's bad to be a boy and it's bad to be male and it's bad to have masculinity. It's toxic. And therefore, he needed to get as far away as he could in his everyday life from feeling those masculine instincts at work. And so he doesn't want to learn them. He tries to avoid learning them. Sometimes they're very needed, and then he doesn't know what to do. If only they would come out, they would have saved the day. But he's getting as far from them as he can. But he has to have a basis for his sense of self. I think his sense of self is actually rooted truthfully in those masculine instincts, and beliefs are like window dressing around that. But he needs to take the beliefs instead to form a floor to be the basis of who he is, because it better not be the masculinity. And how about a woman,
That's good.
who as a girl was told, you must go to work for life, never marry. Marriage is prison. Stay single forever, work really hard, save for retirement, work, work, work. Feminine maternal instincts or the love of babies is bad. The love of men is bad. Stay away from those feminine instincts. So maybe she needs to cobble together a false set of instincts built from
Mm.
belief to have
And
ground to walk
oddly
on.
enough, oddly enough, for the past 48 hours, I've been getting littered with hate
Really?
over that very subject,
Wow.
because my take was simple. And I think people misread my take, but I said almost what you just said. But my take was that we just should be okay if a female or a male follows natural instincts. And what are those natural instincts? Well, we know that prenatal testosterone drives interests, right? We've seen some studies on that, or at least I believe I believe it because I've seen it personally, but I also have read the stories or the studies. But you got this level of prenatal testosterone says, okay, well, if they've gotten the right amount, they're probably going to have these interests, and then they get into the environmental. That's the nature. Now we get into the nurture, and that's where
Yeah.
concept
Are
just
you
comes
talking about
flying in. Like,
STEM?
hey,
You talking about STEM careers? Is that what you mean by
well,
interests?
yeah, well, yeah, I did in that when I was talking about it recently. I was talking about stem versus heal
Okay.
kind of stuff,
Okay, yeah, STEM
and
versus heal, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that kind of stuff. And it was like we what I'm getting at is like, okay, so there's clearly some biology. Like for instance, the Swedish study with the more the egalitarian country, the more likely the gendered preferences are
They
greater
really
than if
divide,
they
yeah.
weren't.
Yeah.
Right. And so you that tells you there's biology behind these preferences. There's
Well,
a biology behind what I've desire to do, like what you were just talking about. Those interests, those paternal or maternal instincts kick in. That's biology. But then, like you're talking about, now we're throwing in nurture, and that throws a jack and kind of wrench in the system. And it's like, well, now
yeah.
what? And now you found yourself with this huge confusion. And boy, we could really go down a rabbit hole with that one. But
Well, you made me think right there mentioning, prenatal testosterone levels, you made me think of Simon Baron Cohen, the
hmm
titan of, child development and, theory of autism spectrum
hmm
disorders and Asperger's, and his theory called the hypermasculine syndrome was that there's too much testosterone in utero,
hmm
and that's what produces an autistic or Asperger's child, usually a boy, most often a
hmm
boy. I guess we got like the rock band arrived here or something. Guess they're gonna have a party or something. But his theory is notice the level one, I guess they call it these days. For 30 years, I was told to call it Asperger's. The level one autistic person, usually a boy, is really into Legos and into structures and tearing things apart and putting them back together like a clock and understanding the systems of things. And he's all about things, not about people. Whereas
yeah, yeah,
boys are about things, men are about things, women are about people is the old
right,
adage, right? But
right,
that's
yeah,
his idea is that it's a masculine tendency to like things and to get into mechanical things. That's STEM. I mean, that's
and
where I went when you said
it's
that.
why that's 100%. It's why you see and you'll see it in Steve Stewart Williams' work a lot, but he likes to cover these types of topics, and Nuzzo does too. But it's like you'll see them pop in where they're saying, look, I hear you that there's so many males in STEM, but there's some biology behind this. It's not like
Yeah,
and so my take
it's
was,
preference.
why are we asking people to fight biology or fight biological tendencies? That's what I was getting at. It's like, why are we asking them to fight it? Now, my wife is a CEO type. My wife is the career type, right? Now, she
Yeah,
also happens to
yeah,
have 4 children, but she was also the CEO type. She was the businesswoman type. She owns 3 businesses. But if I were to, I'm not going to shame a woman for wanting to be that way. Like, if that's your tendency, if that's what you like, if
Yeah.
that's what you're going after, go after it and have fun. But if the woman says, "Hey, I really want to stay home and raise some kids," cool, go do that. Like, I think we spend so much time worrying about whether or not we're hurting somebody's feelings that we're asking them to fight biological tendencies, and they're clearly there. And for some reason, people are wanting to ignore them, and that's the part that kind of baffles me a little bit.
Well, if I were a conspiracy theorist,
Hmm.
which I'm
Hmm.
not,
Ah.
which I'm not, I'd say the sociologists created that.
Oh
And here,
man, you don't
and
have to be a conspiracy theorist to think that.
if I were a conspiracy theorist, which I am not, therefore I am not endorsing this. But
Yeah, yeah,
I say that tongue in cheek because one of the most important models in medicine itself is the biopsychosocial model. You can't devise a
right.
treatment team if you don't
Yeah,
understand biopsychosocial model, which
yep,
encompasses
yep.
all variables causing the person's troubles. So there's
Right,
biology, that's what I
right.
do by prescribing as a psychiatrist. There's psychology, that's what you do and what therapists do, and what in days of old clergy people did, or
Hmm.
philosophers did,
Hmm.
or educators.
Hmm.
But then there's the sociology part. Now, the
Hmm.
sociology part, many erroneously think that to be part of me.
Mm.
Sociology is not part of you. It is what
Right, right.
you're swimming in as a fish.
Yep,
It's the water.
yep,
It's not the
yep.
fish. It's what you're in. And the
Hmm.
separation divider between sociology and the psychology, the psychobiology, let's say, is called
Hmm.
the personal
Hmm.
boundary. So if
Mm.
somebody can't have
Mm.
good personal boundaries, then they're going to confuse the water they swim in for being part of you as the fish, the
Ah, that's
sociology.
good. Yeah, that's
So
good.
sociology dominated research in our field for the last 60 years. And it was not always an existing field. It was created by what Freud's nephew, along with Alexander Ogilvy, the first publicist and marketer.
I believe
It's
it.
a
Yeah, yeah.
marketing, it's a science of marketing. It's a science of
Mm.
wishful thinking and selling. Not today, not today, but
Yeah.
not today, but in its inception,
Right.
advertisers and marketers said, "Hey, let's make a science that will back up our selling." Today, it's a real social science with supposedly rigorous research and so forth. I don't want to get
I, s-
myself in
I,
trouble
s-
here. I'm kind of
I
tiptoeing
struggled
toward
when
a
I
toward a
no, I
cliff,
know.
but
I struggled when
do you get what I'm saying
yeah,
though? That
yeah, yeah.
if all the research in social science was dominated by sociology, who are usually non biologists and non psychologists,
Right,
then
right.
their research is going to look within itself for the
Yes.
grand theory of everything. And I think
Yeah.
that if I were a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, I would say the grand theory of everything would have been, let's say that all behavior is not inherited biologically, it's taught. And let's
Mm.
unteach it and let's
Right.
reteach it in our own
Yeah.
image. Let's reteach how people need to learn to behave in the way I believe it should be, rather
That
than
whole well,
as it is.
that's almost like a blank slate theory, isn't it? I mean,
It is a
that's
blank slate theory. It is a blank
yeah,
slate theory, but
yeah.
it's like saying, the way I've always explained to myself, and like if people ask me, what is this? It doesn't seem to make sense to me. It doesn't seem logical. I'll say, take an Oscar winning actor. Even an Oscar winning actor can't pretend to be something they're not 24/7 to
Right.
portray a role. They like the word role.
Hmm.
The male role, the masculine role, the feminine role. I don't even know if they say feminine role, but roles. Everybody's playing roles,
Mm.
but it's hard work to play a role.
Right.
It takes energy to fake an identity as
Hmm.
an actor. As an actor, you're a
Hmm.
liar. You're a really good liar. You're faking a persona. It's a ridiculous prospect. People are
Right.
pretending 24/7 for life to play some role. No, there's got to be
Mm,
biological instinct in there that you don't even have to
right.
think about. The whole point of Darwin and evolution, you don't have to
Yeah.
think about it. It automatically happens because you inherited it as
And
code.
And what do you do with that? See, that's where I think this is the crux of kind of the middle place of what we're talking about. What do you do with that? It hits you. It's automatic. Your instinct says protect. Like your instinct says, um, handle the crisis without emotion right now. Right? Your instinct says, like, it's like, what do you do with that? Like, and if
Well,
somebody's
you got to
telling you, well,
navigate.
masculinity's toxic, so get out. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'll
Well,
just go sit down
but
and watch you deal with
neither
the crisis.
masculinity nor neither anything that is toxic. That's such a vague word, and it's intended to be vague so that you can't
Sure.
decipher it. But what it really means, if it has any science to it, is narcissistic. Anything
Yeah.
toxic is
Sure.
narcissistic, and
Sure.
masculinity, by its nature, is not narcissism. It's an instinct. Narcissism
Right. Yeah.
is a lack of ethics, poor boundaries,
Mhm.
malintent, win lose thinking. I've got to be right and I got to make you wrong.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
conscious or unconscious malintent, poor boundaries, and bad
Mhm.
behavior. Whereas instincts are always in their. The fact they exist means they are good because our species is still alive,
There you go. There you go.
right?
Let me ask you a question about that. What do you see the difference? I asked, who I asked this? Uh, Boy, my good friend, what's his name? Dr. Keith. I can't remember his last
Yeah.
name. Is
Campbell,
you know who I'm talking about, Professor Keith Campbell.
Keith
That's it, Keith
Campbell.
Campbell
Yeah,
out
yeah,
in
yeah.
University of Georgia. I asked him this question, and he had I don't even remember his answer. I remember kind of sensing what his answer was, but here's the question: What do you see as the distinction between narcissism and just someone being self-centered?
Oh, I was going to say easy, but maybe it's not that easy. Being self-centered is a an observation of behavior, maybe even a trait, not a condition, not a
Mm,
syndrome, not a syndrome. It's a
yeah,
symptom, not a syndrome. Narcissism is a collection of numerous things, but I think there are three pillars to it. I think one, there is a lack of self observation, of self awareness and self
yeah.
reflection, which you could call theory of mind today, or Freud called it
Mhm,
observing ego. So
mhm.
there's a lack of that. Pillar
Yeah,
one.
sure.
Pillar two
Yep,
is terrible boundaries. And
yep.
I've been drawing diagrams of boundaries for 30 years. I have like every manner of boundary diagram with boundary anatomy. And I believe one of the anatomical possible parts of boundaries are holes in the boundary. So the more holes in the boundary, the more
Mhm,
in denial you are,
mm,
and the less self-aware you are, and you are
mhm.
not aware of what you control from what you don't in life.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm,
so you tend to be a controlling, entitled person because you're looking at a
mhm,
hole in your boundary and thinking everything you see is in your control. So
mhm.
you're controlling, entitled, you have poor boundaries, and you suffer a lot because you're bashing your head
Right. Yeah.
on things you don't control and wishing you could control them. And then thirdly, I go to John Forbes Nash and the Nash equilibrium, game theory. Uh,
Mm,
the Nash equilibrium that we all know from the movie A Beautiful Mind highlighted it,
mhm, mhm.
but he won the
Yeah.
Nobel Prize in economics in 1967 for it. And it simply is, if you want the best outcome possible for a human group, and this is in business or selling or marketing or money, um, give everybody a little something, but no one's going to get exactly what they want. Everyone
Mm,
wins, at least a little. It's better to be win-win than win-lose, than to be total conflict.
Mm, yeah.
Everybody loses if you go long enough in conflict. So win-win
Those are
behavior. Those are the three
those are
pillars,
good.
I think, of
Those are
narcissism.
good, like really, yeah, those are really good distinctions because, I get this. I'll tell you from the therapy side of it, or not even sometimes in counseling, but just in everyday life. I get people that are like, "Oh, he's narcissistic," and I'll look and I'll observe, and I don't catch narcissism. I catch self centeredness, and I'm like, and so I think what a lot of people, sort of lay people, are doing is they're really trying to attribute a lot of self centered people to narcissism immediately or really quickly, and I find myself going, "Okay, what's the difference?" Like is
Yeah.
it really? And so, for instance, I know somebody like a family member. I know people I know well and I'm around that are very self centered. It's like it's got to be about me. If it's not about me, I'm just not interested. But they don't have any like ill will towards anybody. It's like they don't really or like narcissistic people. What I find is they're willing to step on the back of your neck if it means getting where they need to get. They don't care. And I think that's the boundary setting you were talking about. They don't have a boundary. They just
Well,
obliterate things
well,
in
I
their
think
path.
there you're getting more into, what is the dark triad or dark tetrad,
Oh,
where you've got
yeah, for
not
sure.
just narcissism, but Machiavellianism, somebody who's
Yeah.
manipulative and is out to take, and be a snake, and psychopathology, somebody that
Yeah.
enjoys the suffering of others. That's
Mhm.
different from not just pure narcissism. And yet there's overlap between these things too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought what you were going to say with the term self-centered, well, what it made me think of is times in life where we of necessity have to become survivalist.
Mm.
Like we got to get through the night. We need
Mm. Mhm.
shelter. Every man for himself, just for tonight, but not tomorrow. When the sun rises, things will be better again, and we don't have to be each of us be survivalist. I mean, if you think about the Darwinian equation, survive and reproduce. I mean, like reptiles and snakes, they eat, they
Mm.
procreate, they rest. That's it. They don't philosophize and gather together as herds and build a house together or something like this.
Well, and self-centered too, it has its effects. It has its extreme negative effects. Like I've had people tell me, like I had a daughter that had a boyfriend like this, and she was like, "Why did he do that?" And I said, "Well, what's in it for him?" And she was like, "Well, why does he not show up to my such and such or my birthday or whatever?" I was like,
Yeah.
"What's in it for him?" And it's like, but is he narcissistic or is he just self-centered to the point where it hurts you and he doesn't really care? It's like, where's that line? And I find myself trying to find that line off a lot. And so when I'm thinking self centeredness, I'm not just thinking about somebody who's like self consumed, but I'm also thinking about it in such a way where they're hurting people around them on a regular basis
Yeah.
and probably aren't even aware that it's happening, you know?
Well, there's also being age appropriate, because when you
Yeah.
describe what sounds like maybe a teen boy, I think, yeah, teen boys and girls are
Yeah.
rather self-centered. It's
Yeah.
age appropriate.
Yeah. Well, and now I should clarify. I have grown daughters now. So I've got,
Okay.
20
Okay.
25-year-old daughters going, why is he like this?
Huh.
And I'm like, well, and the same thing, it didn't really much different. 25-year-old males are
Yeah.
sometimes very similar to 15-year-old males in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
still, I think that's just a trait rather than a syndrome, because you could also
That's
see it
good.
as
That's good.
there could be a man who knows what he wants.
Mhm.
You could say that's self-centered. He knows what he
Mhm.
wants, but that
Mm.
could be masculine. That could be attractive to women,
Right.
that
Hmm.
he knows what he wants.
Sure.
So I mean, there's all
Mhm.
kinds of dimensions of looking at that trait. Let's say.
Yeah. That's
Um,
that's good.
let me let me ask you one more. That's your writing. Before wrapping up here, we probably should start
Yeah.
to wrap up
I've
time
got a
wise.
you were talking about sons earlier. I've got one graduating high school in a little while.
Oh wow! Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So that's where I'm leaving when I leave here.
Oh, I have one graduating elementary school. So,
Yeah.
um,
This is my last one, by the way, so this is nice.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm a late bloomer, so he's a young
Good.
guy. So you quoted John Williams. Um, We've lost the spark is one of the most common things I hear in couples therapy, he says, and one of the most misleading. What most couples are describing is the end of limerence, the neurochemical opening act, the flood of dopamine, norepinephrine, the cocktail behind the runner's high and a gambler's rush. Its job was to narrow attention and create enough energy to make a pair bond possible, but it was never designed to last. And I like that. That's very true. The expectations that couples have for like
Mhm.
amazing sex every single day for many decades. So incredibly accurate, you said. This is why I work to ensure couples are moving toward permanency for the right reasons that have nothing to do with how they feel about the other. The feeling will go, you say. I like that.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
what do you make of that?
man, I actually wrote a piece a while back, a couple years ago about it, and it was called, why did we get married? And I actually, so I'm on my wife and I have blended family, but I remember telling her, look, I do love you and all, but that's not why I'm marrying you. Okay, so I just so you're aware, like, and she kind of, her initial response was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Listen, if because if you marry, here's what my theory is, and I tell this to couples that I do a lot of premarital stuff, and I say, listen, if you are marrying each other because you feel love for each other, you're going to divorce because you no longer feel love for each other. Period.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
your reasoning for joining someone for life has to be more than how you feel about them. It has to be." And so then we start talking about, well, what does that look like? And we start getting into
hmm,
the actual nuts and bolts of that. What are some non-negotiables? And so what I told my wife was this. I said, look, the reason that I'm marrying you is because I believe you were put in my path on purpose, that you and I can join like similarities and like care for each other for the rest of our natural lives, regardless of how we feel about things. Because one day you're not going to love me very much. Now,
yeah, yeah,
obviously, it's we you know about, everybody. Obviously, it does this, right? It's not like you're
yeah,
just not going to love me. It'll come
right.
back,
Yeah,
but it's going to dip. And what do
yeah,
we do when it dips? We have to rely on what we know. What do we know? I know that when I married you, you were my best friend. I know that you cared about me deeply. I know that you're not really this self-centered, or you're this mean person that you were to me
yeah.
5 minutes ago. I know, I got to keep going back to what I know, which is not going to line up with what I feel. And so that's a big thing with me when I deal with young couples, particularly, but really any premarital couple.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
I say it just that bluntly. I say, if you marry each other because of how you feel about each other, you'll divorce each other because of how you feel about each other.
You know, the benchmark has got to be if you only have one benchmark. I'm thinking of arranged marriages. I've known many
Mm,
Near Eastern people who were in arranged marriages, and it works out fantastic most
mhm,
of the time. We're capable of getting along almost always with effort, except for one thing. If one or the other person is really, really narcissistic,
mhm.
there's no way. So you at least have to know what makes a good person in the Aristotelian way, the Aristotle way.
Right.
What makes a
Yeah, yeah,
good person is
yeah.
good boundaries. They are generous, but they are not completely self-destructive, self-sacrificing to the point of self-destruction. They're generous, they're win-win, they are self-aware, they're curious. They're not an uncurious person. There are a lot of those. Like, I
Mhm.
just know people. I just know how things work. No curiosity whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
right.
screen for narcissism right at the
Yeah,
beginning if you're
that's
not going to
good.
do anything else. And then
Yeah,
personalities gel, right? Like you and your wife
yeah,
are kind of
right, right.
opposites attract, I bet, from
Mhm,
what you say.
mhm,
You're
mhm,
you're
yeah,
the artist.
very much so.
the
Yeah,
singer.
oddly enough, she's the business, I'm the creative. It's really kind of backwards from
Yeah,
your typical male female dynamic. And one of the things, another thing I tell them along those lines is I say, you really want to know something about somebody. Watch how they treat waiters and waitresses. Watch
yeah,
how they treat animals,
yeah,
and watch how they treat elderly. Watch how they
yeah.
react to those three populations: animals, elderly, and waiters and waitresses. You get a real quick picture. Now, obviously, that's not exhaustive, but that gives you a quick initial
That's
picture of
good.
who
Yeah,
you're dealing with.
that's right. Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Well,
Man,
Granger,
I'm glad you
good meeting
invited
you.
me, man. I'm out here learning, man. I'm telling you, I'm just learning from you
So
and
am I.
Jeremy and all you guys, and I'm having a blast doing it too. Yeah.
I'll have to come through Nashville sometime. I got a good friend Dave there, whose son-in-law works with Jack White
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
at the studio there. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I've never been to Nashville, so
Well, if you do, please say the word. I'll meet you down there, and we'll clink. We'll share
get some
a
food.
drink.
Uh,
Yes, sir.
awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Good talking. I'll talk to you again soon, and you will
Yes,
get
sir.
a copy of this as well. Thank you guys for
Awesome.
having joined. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Thank you, man. See ya.